almost every organization I've ever been in, especially as it gets larger, go ask for the project list. What are all the initiatives in motion right now? What are all the projects going on right now? And it's way too big, right? If you really look at all the energy, what people are working on to truly actually change things, because there's just the day-to-day, there's the keep the lights on. That's the day work, right? But that's stagnation, right? If you're running a company and you're not looking for areas to improve, new product lines, new customer bases, new technologies, you're stagnating, which means you're going to go down. So you have to be looking at making advancements, right? So what are you going to work on? Everybody works on too many things at once.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Thrive and Achieve with your host, Dr. Matt Markle. Thrive and Achieve is the only podcast where professionals help professionals to succeed in career and wealth. Now, here's your host, Dr. Matt Markle.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Thrive and Achieve, where professionals help professionals thrive in their career and achieve financial success. Today, I am super excited to introduce Gary Leeman. We met through a mutual friend and had a fantastic dinner together back in October. We'll probably talk about that because I've never seen as big of a pork chop as I saw Gary eat during that dinner. But Gary and I see the world very similarly. We are both engineers and we're both operators at heart. And when I met him, I knew right away that everyone listening to this show would learn something from Gary, and I absolutely had to have him on as a guest. So Gary is a master of something called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. And we'll dive deeper into this shortly, but in a nutshell, it's a series of concepts and a series of tools that help entrepreneurs be better leaders at their company. And if I'm incorrect on that, Gary will correct me here shortly. But he is a professional EOS implementer, which means that he helps growth-minded leadership teams stop chasing problems and instead start running a business that in the end state can run itself, which is something we all desire. Now, before coaching, he served as the COO, where he implemented EOS in 2017. And after building the successful company with that and exiting that in 2021, he started using his knowledge, using his wisdom, and implementing that for others full-time in 2022. Gary, welcome to Thrive and Achieve.
Thanks, Matt. It's great to see you. Lovely intro, but let's be clear. I attempted to eat the world's largest pork chop. I did not actually finish it, all right? So I don't want the guests thinking that, I actually hogged out. It was startlingly large, but I gave it a shot. It was a fun dinner.
It was a great dinner at a steak place in Dallas, and I have never seen a pork chop as large as that in my life. But it looked really good.
I sent a picture to my son after that dinner, and his response was OMG.
Fantastic.
So, no, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I know that everyone listening to this is going to take away a ton of insights. So tell us a little bit about your professional journey. What got you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I guess it started out, I grew up with my grandparents who ran a truck repair business, and they wanted my generation, they're in grad kids, they wanted us all to go to college. So that was just known throughout my entire life. Like, as long as I can remember, it was just, hey, I'm going to go to school and go to college. And I thought I would one day graduate college and join that business. And being the grandson of a very gifted mechanical designer, I had some similarities, and it just felt like mechanical engineering was the right degree, especially if that was my life plan. Well, when I graduated high school, my grandmother sold the business. So I went and I got my mechanical engineering degree because I didn't have a plan B. I didn't have a backup plan. And I started in corporate America. And about 6 months in, my first mentor sat me down. And I'll never forget it because he said, I have good news and bad news for you, Leeman. That's what he called me, right? And he was a brilliant man. Master's in mechanical engineering at Cornell. He taught comparative literature at night. He was a really interesting guy. My first mentor. He sat me down and he said, good news, bad news. Good news is you're not an idiot. The bad news is you're not an engineer. And so, okay, what do I do with this information? So he actually gave me a reading list and he said, go get an MBA, work for 5 years, get an MBA, and you'll figure it out. So that's what I did early in my career. I learned a lot as an engineer. It was a great education. I also learned that I was not cut out for a life of engineering. So I went, pursued my MBA at night, got a company to pay for it, and then started into corporate America, really like strategic programs. So it was a combination of project management, strategy work, certainly a lot of project management along the way, a lot of team building. But what I loved about it and what was really exciting about that part of my career is I was always at the forefront of the big initiatives in the companies I worked for. And so, I led drive-through evolve for Starbucks at one point, which was a complete reimagination of every drive-through in the system, how we designed them, how we renovated them, how we operated them. And at the point where I got that project approved, it was the single largest capital expenditure Starbucks had ever approved. Right.
Wow.
So I worked on some really exciting big things. And then I had an opportunity to lead innovation for a restaurant company down in Texas, and it didn't work out. It was one of those situations where on paper, everything should have been fine, but it just wasn't a good fit. And so looking for my next opportunity, I was approached by a startup, early stage startup that made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And it was like a bucket list item. It was like, hey, I'm never going to do a startup as an adult with children and, a corporate career. Couldn't leave a director or VP job for some, bootstrapping, barely funded startup. But
Who would do such a thing like that? That was me. Sorry, go ahead.
right. But it was a moment in time. It seemed like secure enough for a year, and I wasn't currently employed, and I was under they took care of me. The company I moved down to Texas for was very, very kind and generous about the situation, and they honored the contract. And so I was okay. And I said, let's do it. And that ultimately led me here, right? The startup ended up being way harder than I thought it was going to be. We struggled, near death experiences multiple times. And then we were fortunate. One of our early customers sold. His company wanted to invest in us, but he had a condition. He said, I'll invest if you implement EOS. Now, that was 2017, and I had not heard of EOS at that point. And as you said, it's the entrepreneur's operating system. And so I thought I'd been around, I'd heard, had a lot of like senior level leadership changes in companies, right? Been through global reorganizations, had new divisional vice presidents, new executive vice presidents show up, new presidents show up, and, they give a town hall and this is what's going to change. And you go back to work and nothing changes. So I thought, why not? We love this guy. We thought it'd be a really good connection, a good strategic investor. So we said yes. And man, now within 3 weeks, I was convinced, I was sold. Like I'd never seen anything actually functionally change the way you operate day to day. And so like within 3 weeks, I was like, oh, this is real. And within 3 months, I was annoying all my friends about it. I was telling them like, did you know about this? You should run your meetings like this. Let me send you a sample agenda. And they were like, yeah, I called to see how you're doing, not how you to tell me how to run my business. But it was so foundationally powerful. Like it was such a shift for me that I just bought in whole hog, right? And that really turned everything around. We went from 2 years of like massive struggle to having a record January right before COVID. And then it was, I'm telling you, if it was running on the system that saved us, right? Because we were able to stay ahead of it, solve problems immediately. We understood where our data was coming from, and we weathered the storm. And then, we hit a low point at the end of April of COVID year. And over the next 15 months, we did 5X. I went from
Wow.
2 people on my team to 20. And boom, I wake up 5 years later, literally going, I just did it, right? I just built a successful company and found myself now with another job, right? So the experience of building a company, that was really exciting. And it was, all the hard work and effort paid off. And I achieved what I set out to achieve. And I woke up one day and I realized I just don't want to punch a clock and set myself on repeat, if you will. And so I decided it was time. I achieved what I achieved and I exited the company. And after a short stint in consulting, which I realized wasn't a great fit, somebody just mentioned, why don't you do EOS for a living? Why don't you help other companies implement EOS? And so That was 3 years ago. I made that decision. I did a bunch of due diligence, and everything lined up from the core values of what we run as a community all the way through like our ultimate mission, what gets me up and excited in the morning. And I made that leap 3 years ago, and I haven't looked back. It was the best decision I made in my whole career.
Stay with us. We'll be right back to Thrive and Achieve. If you're looking for more information about how to help W-2 employees, check out the Amazon #1 bestseller, Anti-Preneur. It's available on Kindle and now in paperback. Now back to the show.
Wow, what an interesting arc, to go from a mechanical engineer to not really a mechanical engineer to the seeing a lot of stuff in business, seeing the good and seeing the bad, and then being introduced by somebody to fortuitously to a better way, learning the better way. Probably there was some people that were in resistance of that in the very beginning. They're like, wait a minute, we've been doing fine. We know what we're doing. We don't need another TLA, another 3-letter acronym coming at us here. So, but then to embrace it and then ultimately turn that into your career, and from knowing you, not only your career, but your passion. I think that's just absolutely fantastic. To be able to take something that after all this arc, all this journey, and turn it into and now you help others achieve their goals, achieve their dreams in an efficient way.
I love what you said there in terms of the passion, because I've had a series of jobs. Some of those I enjoyed. Some of it I didn't enjoy. I had some great bosses. I've had fantastic mentors. I don't know if I'd ever before EOS really discovered a passion, something I'm passionate about doing, and living that now after like 30 years of a career, and then getting to do what was I reading in perspective, right? There's, I have to do something or I get to do something. And I don't have to tell myself that. I don't have to say I get to help companies. Like I literally wake up in the morning realizing I get to do this, right? Every day as my chosen career. That's the whole difference when you find something you're passionate about. Right. And you don't know it until it hits. Right. So no, I love the way you said that. It really is. It's a passion now.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Was there a defining moment in your either career or financial life that so you're clearly successful. You've had an exit, you're teaching others, you're well respected. Was there a defining moment that really shaped how you think about what success is?
Hmm. I don't know if so I grew up, my grandparents were very successful running their own business, but I saw how hard that was. So what's really interesting about the arc of the whole story is I ended up coming back, and now I work with people like my grandparents were probably 20 years before I was born. And I see how hard it is, say, like for a husband and wife team trying to run a plumbing company, for example. And I'm like, I grew up in that household. Like, I know how much weight they carry. And so being able to help people like that, it's almost in a way, I feel like I'm helping my grandparents in some way. So there have been a lot of indications. I've had amazing mentors, like the guy who's like, hey, you're not an engineer. But I think one thing that really, I would say, was a significant shift. When I started in corporate America, it was still kind of follow the rules, get in the 401k, do the job, wait your turn for promotion. And I ended up working for a tremendously successful individual who ran his own medical products company. And he was phenomenal. He was a very difficult boss, but he was a phenomenal business. Man, I learned so much. I had a great opportunity, but he owned everything. And he wasn't sharing. And he didn't have to. It was, but he owned everything and he wasn't sharing. So there was a limit to how much heart and soul you could really put into working for him, knowing that you were getting paid and that was it. Right? That was the deal. And at the time I was going to school at night for my MBA, and there were a bunch of students. This is right at the .com era. And there were 3 or 4 of the students that actually worked at Starbucks at the time. And they spoke about the company as if they owned it. And they did in a way, right? They had equity. And the difference with the way they spoke about Starbucks versus kind of everybody else, like those people who worked at Microsoft who had stock, but just had a different
It's a
feeling.
sea of a
There was
zillion people, and yeah.
Yeah, there was all the major industry of Seattle was basically represented there. But these people from Starbucks, they talked in a totally different way. Their passion about the company was totally different, and that made me really wonder what was going on. And so I started learning more about it, talking to more people about it, and it ended up taking an opportunity uh, for a temporary assignment there just to check it out. And being there like 6 months, just seeing a bunch of people that actually had a passion for the company. It wasn't mine. Like I said, it took me a long time to get to my passion. But that shared ownership mentality, realizing how powerful that was, and they were early successful with employee stock options and beanstalk, they called it. And that really kind of changed the way I looked at my plans for my future career. I was like, okay, equity is going to be a part of anything I do going forward, right? I'm not going to be interested in a job that's got like a high bonus potential, right? There's something about feeling part of the ownership and feeling the efforts you put in, gaining some of those rewards, right? Having that shared back, I think that really mattered to me. And so that was probably a significant, mindset shift. Up until that point, it was like, you negotiated for a better salary. Hope for a bigger bonus at the end of the year, right? But the idea that you're actually part of the win, if you will, that you're contributing and you're going to get paid at the end as the company does better, that was very attractive to me. And I think it's a great model. I think there's a lot of key companies that have been very successful with that model.
And I love what you did there, because without saying it, you did basically just what we talk about in the Anti-Preneur book. Is like you are when you receive equity, now you have assets, right? That's it's not just salary, which you can try to convert into assets, but it's an asset at the point of transfer to you. And I think that by doing that, unless you just are diligent about like immediately selling it and going and blowing the money on something, you'll be kind of forced to start putting more things on your own personal balance sheet. I really like that. And I like the fact that, it's at least it's worth saying that equity in public companies, or at least companies where the equity is liquid, versus those in startups where it's not. That's a different level of discussion. With one, it is an asset and it's something that you can trade for other assets. With the startup where it's not liquid, or yes, it's an asset, but they're also tied into quite a bit of risk before the point where you can ever actually turn that into something other than paper. So it is a little bit different in a lot of the startups right now. So,
It's vastly different. It's risk, right? But when people are eager to pay you with equity, they don't feel very strongly that they're giving much up. So it's an interesting tell when someone's like, look, I can't afford to pay you to help me, right? Someone wants to get you to do some nights and weekend consulting to help them out. And they're like, I can't really afford it, but I can give you, I can give you
I can
stock.
give you some more answer. I can give you some stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
If they're so eager to trade that stock, then they're not seeing it as highly valuable. You're going, oh, wow, if he goes public, this could be worth 20 grand when I was only going to charge 2, but he's not handing you 20 grand. He's handing you what he thinks is essentially worthless, hoping it will be something. What has he got to lose or she got to lose when they're offering you that? And that's another lesson I learned early on, because, when you're doing side hustles and you meet a lot of people and they can offer you that, you learn quickly after you take a couple of those deals that you're better off just cutting your rate, getting paid for your hours. If
Often,
they can't afford you at 200 an hour, give it to them for 100 an hour. You're going to get paid for the hour. But if you take paper, the odds of that ever turning into something,
right?
yeah, pretty minimal.
It's a long road, and there's a lot of opportunities for both dilution as well as for just, all it takes is one bad leader to submarine a company. And you could have something that's been going great, great, great. Bad leader comes in, submarines the company, and now the equity goes to zero. Or it's restructured, common gets wiped out, and just there's some other bad things for.
Yeah. Ask yourself when you get that piece of paper, what number are you in line when the money gets handed out? You're probably last in line, right? Debt gets first,
Yep.
right? And so, yes, it's,
Debt, preferred, the
yep.
if it's part
But that was
lawsuit,
another lesson as a young man. I thought, sure, what do I got to lose? This could turn into something big, because I was also right when all that was happening when I joined Starbucks. .com boom was going on, So before I graduated, we used to, it was shocking. Before I graduated, a couple of my classmates were multimillionaires
On paper.
on paper,
Right.
on paper.
Yeah. I think we've
Boy,
all,
did that change quickly. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we, all of us who have worked in the startup industries at some point have done the calculation of like, when this hits, I'll be worth, and there's a lot of zeros after a number. And in reality, there's a lot of zeros, but there may not be a number in the front of it. So, so
Yeah.
all right, let's jump into some things about
Yeah.
business and business strategy. You've worked with a lot of organizations across a lot of industries. You mentioned several of them already. What causes organizations that are filled with smart, hardworking people to still struggle with execution? You've seen some probably many different examples of this, but ultimately it's going to break down into probably some canonical root causes. What do you see as like the root causes for this?
So interestingly, root cause. I'd say there's two things that are very, very common. Inability to focus. Almost every organization I've ever been in, especially as it gets larger, go ask for the project list. What are all the initiatives in motion right now? What are all the projects going on right now? And it's way too big, right? If you really look at all the energy, what people are working on to truly actually change things, because there's just the day to day. There's the keep the lights on. That's the day work, right? But that's stagnation, right? If you're running a company and you're not looking for areas to improve, new product lines, new customer bases, new technologies, you're stagnating, which means you're going to go down. So you have to be looking at making advancements, right? So what are you going to work on? Everybody works on too many things at once. And so you just end up, there's no such thing as multitasking. I think everyone's finally starting to realize that that's horrible, but there's no difference between multitasking and asking somebody to say, be the accounting manager, but also lead 7 different projects, right? That person is inherently trying to multitask, because you can't truly effectively run 7 things at once, right? So, well, while you send this information out to the vendor and wait, that's dead time. You can then use that dead time to run this part of this project. And then while you're waiting for that team, people make up in their mind that life chunks out like that. But there's switching costs that people are unaware of, just wrapping your head around, right? Then there's the day-to-day interruptions. I mean, everybody's always trying to do too much. Number one problem. If everybody, I don't care what the company is, I challenge anybody, grow up and pick one. Pick one. You got 7 things you're working on right now. Pick one. What's the most important thing? Forget everything else. Just do that. Stay on that till it's done. You've now made progress. The other 7, it's the illusion of progress. I've got 7 things going, right? Think about when they're all done, how huge that's going to be when all 7 are done. All 7 never get done. Nothing gets done. Nothing gets done well. Pick one, finish it.
That's I think we do that because there's this desire to feel busy, and that's we've seen that since the
Prove our
80s.
worth.
Yeah. Busyness equals worth, right? So we've seen that
Right.
from the 80s. I remember that, as a child of someone who's in, high school and college in the 80s. That's what we've seen. Busy is the key. That's the successful people.
And I still believe in the axiom, like, if you want to get something done, find a busy person. That's a different law I'll tell you about. There might be an interesting conversation there. But most people, look, we can't multitask. That's a lie. Multitasking is a lie. There's switching costs. Every time you have to switch your brain from one subject matter to another. This is why your span of control as a manager, if you've got 8 people that report to you and they all do the exact same job, you can kind of manage 8 people because it's the same conversation with a different person. But if you've got 8 people and they all do a very distinct role, every time you as a manager has to talk to that person, your brain needs to shift. You got to go, well, I just talked to my accounts payable rep. Now I'm talking to my customer service rep. My brain has to switch. That's gear grinding. That's task switching, and that consumes energy and brain power, and so there's a human limit. Just like there's a human limit of how many like initiatives you can run because you have to constantly switch in between those tasks. So focus is number one. I see people trying to do too much all the time. Every company I've ever been at, and it's the number one thing that I shouldn't say it's the number one thing. It's a big thing I work on with my clients in my system. Focus.
Reread Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, and in it talks about by the way, if you haven't read that, anybody listening, get it. Easy read, but full of a ton of really powerful insights that'll make you say like, oh, he can't be right on this. There's no way. When he talks about monopolies, when he talks about secrets, when he talks about all these other things, but it's but there's wisdom in that, and I really love it. And just him talking about how VCs make investments, and the smart VCs use the power of law to their benefit. Pick a few that they hope are going to be really big, and lean in hard into those, as opposed to peanut butter spreading over many and diversifying yourself into a VC that's not going to be around very much longer. So,
Well, same with companies. It's another, wasn't in my top two, but it reminded me like in Good to Great, he makes the point very well that you really have to pick something that you're going to be uniquely good at and get better at it. You can't be everything to everybody. So again, a lot of companies, they try, right? They were successful here. So, let's get into this game. We'll be successful there. And you find out quickly, like Starbucks wanted to design its own software. Starbucks was really good about creating very warm third place environments, customer service, premium coffee, not very good at software. But everybody gets this delusion. You're successful doing one thing and you think, well, how hard can this other thing be? And it's it's outside of your core focus. It's not what you uniquely do well. So I see companies also get lost there. But if you can pick the most important things and focus on a few and get them done, that's a big shift for companies. And a lot of companies make that mistake. They're trying to do too much. And another thing I find, and this goes back to this like root cause, is rarely are people talking about the most important problem. And rarely when they are talking about the most important, are they actually having the discussion get to the root cause. It's usually subjective. It's usually ego. It's usually half information. It's almost always, here's what I think we should do, not what's really going on, not what's the true root cause. Like, if we solve this problem in this manner, will it come back? If it's a fix, not a solution, a fix is, I'll give you an example. I was with a client a couple weeks ago and I was leading them through this exercise, and okay, so we have this issue to discuss what's going on. Our service map is out. So somebody calls and they're not sure who to assign as a technician because their service map was out of date. Somebody wasn't on the service map. So they're like, all right, so how do we solve this? And someone's like, well, let's just put this individual, let's update the service map and put the individual on. And they felt pretty good about it. They're like, that was quick. We talked about an issue. That's a problem. Here's how we're going to fix it. And I said, okay. So when is that issue going to come back? When is the service map going out of date again? They didn't solve the root cause, right? They fixed today's problem. A name is not on the map. The map is incorrect today. So let's fix it today. That's all you're doing. Tomorrow, if the crew changes, the map's going to break again. So how do we make sure the map doesn't break again? How do we make sure the map is always accurate? So few companies take the time to really drill down and ask the question, what's ultimately causing this problem and what solution can we put in place so this problem doesn't come up again? It's very much, so the beginning of Atomic Habits talks about this 1% rule, right? And a lot of people are, it's not worth it. Let's just fix it and move on. Fix it and move on means that problem's just going to keep coming back. And you start building a whole company where all these problems successively keep coming back. And so now your workforce is just constantly firefighting. And nothing seems to work anymore. And then you inevitably break, you burst at the seams, you fall apart. So unless you really have a discipline as issues arise, to be open and honest, get to the root cause of those issues and actually put a solution in, you cannot advance. You will just reach a certain point and collapse. That's very common, right? There's a million reasons companies fail, but like some very common things, they start to get outside of their sweet spot. They try and do too much. That's one. They don't focus on the most important things. And two, they don't truly, really focus on the most important problems. There's a lot of quote unquote problems that are just noise, right? But that can take up all the oxygen in a room if you got the squeaky wheel. And now you've wasted 8 people's hour talking about something that wasn't that actually important to the business. So are you talking about the right problem, and are you getting to the root cause and actually solving? Those are very common things I see almost all companies struggle with. And if they could just do those 2 things better, that things would really get better over time.
Yeah, I think on that last one, it comes down to the company culture of thinking beyond your swim lane. When I was a
Mm,
CEO, we had problems that affected the entirety of the company. But
mhm,
so I was brought in to do a turnaround on this company. The executive team were, and I've used this example before. It's my story is a story of governors and directors. They were all like the governors of their own little fiefdoms, right? Like
mm.
I'm the hi, I'm Bob. I'm the governor of the state of engineering. I'm Bill. I'm the governor of the state of sales. I'm Fred. I'm the governor of the great commonwealth of human resources. Whatever and they're
Yes,
all governors there. And just like when
that's
you
right.
have the governors convention in D.C., they'll come there and they're all representing their own little states, and that's really all they care about. They're thinking very parochially. Company solutions are not solved by a series of governors. They're solved by people thinking like they're on the board of directors for the company, where your parochial viewpoint is left at the door. No one on the board of directors for a company. I've been in multiple companies' boards. The They're not looking at it from the standpoint of, all right, from my viewpoint, it's like, no, it's like we have to solve this problem. We have to move this company from here to here. Doesn't matter. We're all working together on it, and it doesn't matter whether it's going to be solved by engineering or sales or people or M&A or uh, restructure or raises or whatever. We'll figure out the solution, and it's not going to be viewed in a parochial sense. So that's the governors versus directors. But you have to instill in people that's how you want them to think. Otherwise, they'll be like, well, in my purview and in my control, I can add Bob's name to the service map. And I can do that, and I don't have to ask anybody else. I don't have to try to fight the system. I don't have to, submit a ticket to be heard by the VP of something in 6 months, or propose an IRAD initiative where we need to get money. Ah, this is a problem. I can fix this one right now, and then I can move on to something else. And it's that short
Path of
term
least
thinking.
resistance,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's certainly that, and 100% the silos and governors. I see that all the time. It's, in fact, one of the very first things I do with a leadership team, and I actually use that as an example. It's, okay, now you guys all have to forget your day jobs, pretend you're all the board directors. This is how I set it up. I tell people, imagine this company hired you all as experts. And let's say the leadership team of a supply company. Hey, there's a supply company in Canada that's hired you all as experts to tell them what to do. Study this company as if you were outside experts. Be a board of directors for your company. You got to start working on your business, not in your business. And when you show up and you're like, well, I'm the Earl of HR. Yes, so you're working in your role. You're working in your business. When you set your mind to like a board of directors type of thought, it's absolutely what you're doing. You have to look at it from afar. You're working on the business. You have to get out of your seat. You can't understand a system you're a part of. So elevating out of your day to day is really the only way you effectively run a leadership team. So that's absolutely what I do too. Yeah, I see that all the time.
The can't understand system you're a part of. The phrase, the Dr. Matt phrase for that is like, you're on the chessboard, right? If you're on the chessboard, you're not seeing the strategies and things that affect you personally. If you pull yourself off and view it from above, abstract yourself away from it, then that's why I like having outside qualified outside advisors and outside consultants, because as a CEO or president or a senior leader, you can ask them and they're not on the chessboard, right? You ask somebody who works for you, they're on the chessboard. Like, well, I think Dr. Matt, you should do this because you're so smart. And it's like, well, that's not what I want to hear. As the board of directors, well, you're on the chessboard, with that as well. So asking somebody who has a vested interest in giving you a right answer because you're probably compensating them, not with equity, but compensating them with money, but doesn't have a vested interest in what the outcome of the answer is. So that to me, I think is brilliant. Okay, let's jump over for someone who's never heard of EOS. How would you explain it, and what are the first few changes a leadership team actually makes when they adopt it?
So the way at a very high level, the way I explain EOS is EOS helps my clients get everything they want from their business. And I do that by providing a complete system of simple, practical tools that helps my clients experience three things we call vision, traction, and healthy. Okay. So vision from the standpoint is I first work with ownership and their leaders to make sure everybody's 100% on the same page with where the company is going and how it plans to get there. Traction from the standpoint is I work with those leaders to create real discipline and accountability so that everywhere you look, you see every part of that vision being executed at a high level. And then healthy, meaning I work to help create a healthy, functional, cohesive leadership team. Because unfortunately, even great leaders, sometimes they don't work well as a team, right? So from there, as the leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization, right? When I work with my clients, we get to the point where everybody, 100% of the organization is 100% crystal clear on the vision, on the plan, where we're going, how we're going to get there. They're all gaining consistent traction, executing with discipline and accountability, advancing as a healthy, functional team. So this complete system helps my companies achieve that vision, traction, healthy. That's our secret sauce as an operating model.
For the vision, is there a horizon that you're looking at for that to typically focus yourself? Because if you look too far off, it's hard to line up the pieces to get there. If you're too, if like, okay, I'm gonna describe our vision of what we're going to accomplish before lunch today. Well, that probably is a little bit too tactical, right?
Yeah. So great question. One of the things I love about EOS is how well it's designed for our target audience. My target client, they've hit a ceiling in some way, right? They're struggling. They're struggling. They're starting to see profits erode. Their growth has started to plateau. They're starting to lose key individuals. They've tried a lot of different things and nothing seems to work anymore. Like what got them here won't get them there. Inevitably, everybody hits a ceiling. Organizations hit ceilings, departments hit ceilings, individuals hit ceilings. This is a truism in life. Dr. Larry Greiner in UCLA, I think, seminal study, meta-analysis, 30,000 companies has proven it. Not a single company has grown in a straight line. Every company hits a ceiling and they go through a revolution or an evolution of business. It's the name of the paper. It's interesting, but it proves the point. You're going to hit a ceiling. Now, what do you do? Well, my companies, they're usually maxed out. They don't have a lot of spare resources. So if you bring them some complicated solution on top of everything that's going on today, what's the chances of them being able to understand it and execute on it? What's the chance of that surviving after you leave the room? So we specifically design all of our tools to be simple because that you can actually execute. So when we talk about vision and we talk about time frame, we break down a vision and a plan in answering 8 questions, Matt. We sit with the team and get 8 questions. We get the leadership team 100% on the same page to the answer of 8 questions. And now we have a compelling vision statement you can share with the whole company and get them excited about, and the plan on how you're going to get there. Question number 4 of the 8 questions. What's your long-term target? Typically, we start at 10 years. 10 years is a pretty good, if you don't have a particular reason to choose a different number, let's set a 10-year target or a number one business goal. What do you want to get out of this company? What's your number one objective or goal for the company? Let's set that as a simple objective statement. Sometimes it's 5 years, sometimes it's all the way up to 30. It depends on the company. So, what might change that? There may be a company that has, they know that ownership is reaching retirement age. They are not interested. Their children are not interested in taking over. So they're looking at an exit. And so they might set a 5-year target and they might say that as a valuation. We want to hit this type of valuation in 5 years. Another company might be, say, a not-for-profit, and they might put a 30-year mission out, right? They might say, hey, we want to be the largest food bank in the state of Texas in 30 years. And a 30-year time horizon for something like that makes a lot of sense, right? So it depends a bit on the structure and the type of organization. 5 to 30, we usually start at 10. A lot of my clients end up with a 10-year long-term target, but it's a single objective statement. Then we ask, all right, 3 years from now, let's get a real good picture 3 years from now on your way. Because that almost, if you do it right, it almost begs the question, how the heck are we going to do that? If it's not, it's not really a BHAG, right? It's not a really audacious goal. If you can just map out, oh, well, we just grow 2% a year and we'll hit it. That's not very compelling. That's not very challenging. It should be something where you're not sure how you're going to get there. And if you set that kind of target, it will drive those changes. It'll necessitate change. So then we go, okay, let's take it 3 years from today on the way to your long-term target. What does this company look like? And we create a real clear mental picture. That's something you can kind of start to wrap your head around. Wow, if we're going to be the largest food bank in Texas in 30 years, 3 years from now, we probably have to at least have a second location open, for instance. Now I can start to see that, understand that. If you get that really clear, one, we know that if everyone can see something in their mind's eye, the chances of achieving it go up, right? Sharing that, getting people prepared and excited about change. This 10-year target, who's in your workforce thinking I'm going to be here in 10 years necessarily to be part of that? That could be exciting. I'll help you achieve that, but I might not be here in that day. But I'll be part of this journey in 3 years, and now I'm prepared. Oh, we're going to be opening a location. Oh, we're all going to have our own office. Oh, we're all going to work remote. Like, you're preparing people that things are changing, right? Get comfortable with that because, right, we are moving and advancing and growing as a company. And then if you can get a real clear 3-year picture, now you have a chance to bring it down to the ground and understand in a 1-year picture, like a plan. This is what we're going to look like in 3 years. Now I can get a team to really wrap that around and go, okay, we're going to look like that in 3 years on our way to our long-term goal. What do we have to achieve this year? And so we ladder it. You see how it works? And then once you have a clear 1-year plan, then what do we do in the next 90 days? How do we set our quarterly rocks? Now you can see how everything ladders up, right? So if that's where we're taking this company, if that's what we're going to look like in 3 years, well, we know we're going to have to accomplish this year. If we're going to do this year, what's the most important things to do in this next quarter? All right. And then we talk about winning the week, to win the month, to win the quarter, to win the year, right? So everything ladders. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, the things that I personally just do, I win the day, win the week, the move the need, all the things I'm doing, I should have, man, a long time ago, I should have
You should have wrote the
I
book.
should have written
Then
a
you could
book
be
on
running
this. It's
EOS.
like, I would have probably called it something different. I'm kind of got this weird self-branding thing. It probably EOS would be like MOS, like Matt's operating system or something like that.
Dr. Matt's method.
Dr. Matt's method. Oh yeah, the DMM. So excellent. Yeah, I do that very same thing. It's like what do we need to go to be by the end of the year, and then break it down by the quarter, and then by the week. I don't do monthly goals because basically the month starts a lot of times in the middle of the week. I think in weeks and I think in quarters, and I well, I'm just ranting. This concept of the people talk about set impossible goals. Well, as an engineer, that's a divide by zero, right? I don't like it phrasing it like that, but I do like using a trick I've used in the past and I've seen others use as well. Is like, if we want to do this seems impossible unless we do the one thing. And usually that one thing is carving off the things that aren't a priority, carving off every single thing that's going to hold you down, carving off and throwing out, or at least delaying everything that's not core to what you say is your number one priority, and then focusing like heck on that. That's That's the aspect of impossible goals that I like to bring in. It's like it's impossible unless, and then that unless is like the freeing thing. If we want to hit this, we can't be doing all these other things. We can't be distracted. We have to be singularly focused, and we probably have to do this, this, and this. We need to do them pretty quickly.
So there is starting to be this idea that goals are not inherently the right way to approach things. And there's some truth to this. Think about this. Like everybody who goes to the Olympic, they all have the same goal to win the gold medal. Only one person in the sport wins. But everybody set that goal. So was it the goal that somebody set that caused them to win the gold medal? And you can do this argument all over the place. It's not the goal. And you look at who wins, and it's their system. It's who had the right system and then followed that system. This act of setting goals, this act of saying, let's paint a long-term number one business objective. Let's visualize 3 years out. Let's use that to make a plan for the year and a set of specific goals. Let's then break that down to the quarter. Let's keep that on track by running these good weekly meetings and watching our numbers. That's the system. So it's not systems without goals. It's not goals without systems. And that's the complete system of simple tools. So I do believe that you got to set a goal, but I also believe that the goal is not the key. It's the system that helps you achieve that goal, right? And by defining things really clearly, it is a forcing function back to the focus thing. You can't do it all. It's okay to paint the picture. This is, I want to achieve it all. But inevitably then going through that system of breaking it down, well, then what does that look like? Well, then what does that look like? Well, then what can we accomplish now? What should we focus on now? That forces you to make those tough choices. And then the system is how you go about doing that, keeping everybody aligned on that. And the day-to-day magic, the winning is operating in the system, which is why I bring a complete system. That's why I chose not to be a vision consultant or a values consultant, right? Or a process consultant. They're all great and you need them all. But I believe in the system. If you can really adopt a system, and ours is one, but if you got to take a system and execute against the system, that is inevitably how everybody ultimately wins. It's not the goals they set. Every team sets the goal to win the Super Bowl. Every Olympic athlete sets the goal to win the gold medal. The goal isn't what got it done. It was their systems. What was it? Bill Walsh basically said, if you do all the things right that you practice, right? If you run the plays and you execute, the score takes care of itself.
And I think you have to look at that. You have to look at that in a probabilistic sense, in an expected value sense. So if you do these things, then you will be likely to win most of the time or more than half the time or whatever. Because sometimes the dragon wins. It is just a fact of nature. Sometimes the dragon wins. Sometimes
the dragon wins.
Yeah, that's a madism also. Sometimes the dragon wins. You did everything right and COVID hit, or whatever. But if you build the systems along the way and you set the goals of things that are related to things that you can measure and you can control, as opposed to the things that you can't, then that's just laying out the groundwork, and then it's something you can focus on, you can hold people accountable to. 100%. I absolutely agree with you. Okay, you've given us a ton of useful advice. I could geek out on this, my gosh, for like a long, long time. Gary, how do we get in touch with you?
I'll share my information. Gary.Leeman at EOSworldwide.com is my email. Simplest way, and you can find me on LinkedIn, Gary Leeman. If you search Leeman and EOS, you'll probably find me, but I'll share my information with you to share out.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all the super valuable advice. This has been a joy. And again, I could go for like several more hours.
I can't believe it's been an hour, man. This is you and I talk again, with podcasts or not. It's good to see you. Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
Absolutely. Okay, everybody, we will see you next time on Thrive and Achieve, where professionals help professionals thrive in their career and achieve financial success. Have a great day, everybody.